Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the editorial director at Worn and Wound. Really happy to be joined today by two of my colleagues virtually for me. We've got Garrett Jones, our photographer. Garrett, how's it going?
Not too bad. How's it hanging, Zach?
It's hanging pretty well. You know, it's a Monday early afternoon, you know, as we record, kind of like similar to last week, just kind of like easing into the week with a podcast. I sort of like this, you know, early in the week podcast recording.
Yeah, it's a great way to kick things off and get your mind right for the rest of the week.
It's a very different vibe. I think, like, you know, often we were able to record podcasts at the end of the week, and I think that like that presents a very different atmosphere than an early week in the week recording because you know, you're fresh and you have I don't know, maybe like a certain optimism about things that you don't have on a Friday. Anyway, thanks for coming on, Garrett. I've also got Liam O'Donnell. Liam is our videographer here at Worn and Wound. Liam, how's it going?
I'm great. I'm excited to hopefully learn about some new EDC technologies.
Yes. So that's what we're talking about today. This is an EDC focused episode. It's been a while since we've done something that's just like purely EDC related. We'll talk a little bit about how like EDC and the watch world are related, of course, but I wanted to get Liam and Garrett on the pod because, well, Garrett, obviously you're like the EDC guy around the office. I think you're kind of like shaking your head a little, but you know, that's sort of,
I mean, there's worse titles to have, so I'll wear this one proudly.
And Liam, I think you're a bit modest talking about, you know, your novice status in the EDC world. You're pretty knowledgeable on stuff as well, probably a little bit more than me at least. But we're going to just talk about some recent EDC pickups that you guys have made, how seasonality plays into EDC. We're heading into the colder months, and Garrett, maybe we can talk a little bit about how like summer EDC is different from winter EDC and sort of like the implications there. I also want to talk about travel because travel is always comes up in these conversations. I know you guys have you know, a lot of you know, insight into that, both being on the media side, you know, hauling cameras around and also all your other gear. So that'll be a fun aspect of this conversation as well. And we've got some cultural recs at the end of the show. Always a fan favorite segment. Before we do any of that, let's do a quick wrist check. Well, Liam, let's start with you. What are you wearing today?
All right. So today I'm wearing the Seiko SPB 265. This is the Ice Diver.
Very nice.
And,
Very nice.
It has a lovely icy blue textured dial with the sort of turtle-shaped case. It's got a 6R movement in it. Hand winding and hacking. Just a good Seiko.
Is that a watch that you own? How long have you had that?
Yeah, this is my personal one. I've had it for a year or so now. I love tool watches, so I have too many. But this one had a really cool dial, so I had to pick it up. Yeah,
no, those those like those kind of like icy blue dials. They did like several of those. I think that one was part of a series of like ice divers or something.
Yeah,
those
this
lines.
is
a few of those
U.S. special edition, I believe.
Yeah. Very cool. Excellent pickup. Garrett, what about you? What have you got?
I've got on the New York City Wind Up Watch Fair Special Edition snorkel from Bulova. Their gray ceramic case, green dial, standard bezel with a nice little pop of yellow on the second hand. Quartz model. I'm running lightweight and simple today. And then I threw it on a spring-made Nimbus nylon band.
Very cool. Yeah, those I have to admit, those Bulova snorkels didn't really quite click for me until I started seeing the wind up editions that we collaborated with Bulova on. I think that like something about seeing that, like, you know, the artwork on the case back and, you know, like the color matching, they started to like make more sense at that point for me. So those are, that was a cool series of watches that we did this year with
they came across a bit, you know, a bit more fun, a bit more playful. Obviously, you know, if you were at the fair, at the fairs that we had them for, you know, it was a great, easy pickup, little memento for the trip. So just a fun way to do it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I love a watch that kind of can serve as a little souvenir of a moment like that. So yeah, very, very cool. I'm wearing a watch that I currently have in for review. The review actually might be on the website by the time this podcast airs. It's the Kiwame Tokyo. Actually, I'm not sure if this watch has like a specific model name. I'll have to look that up for the review. But this is sort of a, you know, another watch in this sort of like trend we're seeing of like these like kind of smaller Japanese Calatrava style watches. It's sort of an interesting little like micro trend among Japanese brands doing these sort of like 90s, 50s inspired like dress/casual watches that have like brigade numerals and usually like a little, smaller cases. And we see them at like all different price points from, like this watch is, I think, about $650, in US dollars. And then there are some like very, very high end, examples of this trend that we're seeing out of Japan that are, like tens of thousands of dollars, like very artisanal and, limited. So it's this really cool, like kind of interesting little thing that's happening in the watch industry right now. So if that review is live by the time this podcast goes up, we will include a show note for it, but I have to put the finishing touches on it. The TLDR though is that I like this watch quite a bit. It's like it's a very cool little watch, and I don't think anyone will be complaining about the price of this watch once they have it on their wrist. That's a refreshing thing, because so much of watch commentary on Instagram is just, it's way too expensive, and this is not. This is a very fairly priced, affordable watch, I think.
I look forward to reading the review.
Thank you. Yes, no, you will see it. You will be among the first to see it. So we'll get it out there soon if it's not already. All right, guys, let's transition into our EDC discussion. I'll start things off by just asking, have you picked anything up recently that you like, that you want to recommend? Garrett, before we hit record on the podcast, you talked about your knife buying habit. I won't disclose what you told me because you said you didn't want that specifically, but
yeah,
you're kind of like you're always kind of like, mentioning sort of like offhand, like new things that you picked up, and tell me about something recently that you picked up that's impressed you, and sort of like what you're shopping for these days in the EDC world.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of like taking that backwards as you mentioned it. I mean, I'm really kind of moving towards supporting makers, whether small or bigger, that are doing stuff really in-house, and not outsourcing as much. Kind of, we've seen that a little bit in the watch industry as well, but really on the EDC side, with tariffs and everything that's going on, a lot of companies are either kind of doubling down on foreign production or really dumping money into domestic production. Each one has its place at different price points. As part of that, like, been buying a bunch of stuff from ProTech because they make, to my understanding, basically everything out of California. I know those guys really well, and so whenever they put something out cool, I love picking it up if I'm able to. And actually should be coming in today is a brand new Malibu from them with flat dark earth scales, blasted hardware, and an acid washed Magna Cut Wharncliffe blade. So something, kind of in the profile of what I like already, but a little bit different. Just had to treat myself a little bit, wanted something new and special. So they got the bid on this one.
You'll never hear pushback from anyone on this podcast about the notion of treating yourself. I think that's that's sort of core to what we do here. We're pro treat
If anything,
yourself.
we're a band of enablers.
Yes, that's the understatement of the century. I think we're all masters of enabling. So you mentioned tariffs, and so I'm curious. Like you're very plugged into the EDC community. You're on the I know you're in Facebook groups, and I'm sure there are forums and other kind of like Instagram chats and whatever on the EDC, like the business side of things. What's the conversation like on tariffs among EDC enthusiasts? Is it as like in the watch world, it's like it's calmed down a little bit, I think, as some brands have sort of like started to figure out how to navigate the situation in their own way. What's kind of like the arc of the tariff conversation in EDC world?
I mean, really, like, it's kind of been vastly different to the watch world from what I've seen. People haven't really freaked out as much, I would say, as kind of the watch industry did. I think a lot of that's because there's a lot of transparency nowadays with where everything's coming from in the EDC world, which I think we're starting to see that a lot more in the watch industry, but hasn't always been the case. You very quickly know, like, all right, I'm buying a knife, it was made in China, or I'm buying a knife, it was made in Pennsylvania or California or wherever else. And so it wasn't as big of a deal, I don't feel like. Obviously there's always the consumer is aware of what's going on, but really there's just kind of been an overall shift, kind of down price point from a lot of people, whether that's U.S. production moving overseas. Some people are bringing stuff back in-house as well in the U.S. And I kind of think we'll touch on it a bit more, but it spawned a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of collaborations between small makers in the U.S. that were doing stuff overseas that are now doing stuff with people domestically. And just kind of really, it's just kind of strengthened the bond between a bunch of companies and the consumer. And, everybody's been really transparent, and then they've just rode the wave and went with it.
Yeah, that's nice to hear, because I think that there is a similar story in the watch world of brands, especially like smaller independent brands and like a lot of the micro brands that we are so kind of closely tied to, like coming up with like creative solutions to navigate the tariff situation. And it's nice to hear that in the EDC world it's sort of a similar story. I think that that's probably that probably holds true in a lot of enthusiasts, like consumer spaces where like a dedication to these products is so important for like long-term growth and like then the health of the industry. So that's nice to hear. Liam, how about you? Have you like picked up anything recently? What's kind of been your like EDC path like this year? Is it I don't know if we've ever really like talked specifically about like knives. I know Garrett's a big knife guy. You strike me as someone, because you're so gear oriented, like photography, and maybe like more bag oriented. Am I making a correct assumption there? We've talked about bags a little bit, you and I. So tell me about what you've liked this year and things you picked up.
Yeah, I'm definitely more of a bag guy than I am a knife guy. I only have the one knife. It's a Spyderco, kind of one of the entry level ones. It kind of does the job that I need it to do. I find it difficult to buy more than one really good thing other than watches. I feel like I've got lots and lots of those because they're all, different in terms of the way they look, but they all function the same. With knives, I feel like I haven't quite reached that stage yet. I don't know if I ever will. Garrett's laughing there probably because he knows what's going to happen eventually.
Yes,
we'll
we can all
there.
see we can all see this future for ourselves where we've just been like dipped into this other enthusiast world, and we come out like fully Garrettized, where we're just like
absolutely
buying knives on like a basis.
Yeah, the knife I have is great. I think it's not interesting. I think that's probably where the genesis will be for me to look at maybe a new knife in the future as something that's maybe a little more hefty, a little more sort of rugged, utilitarian. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with knives. But bags, definitely, I'm sort of a little more plugged into that space. I'm a big Mission Workshop fan. I think just about every bag I have is a Mission Workshop bag. I've really sort of bought into that ecosystem. But in terms of new pickups, I have picked up a couple of things from a brand called Craig Hill. And I got absolutely pummeled by their ads on Instagram, and they have really fantastic ads. They're very fascinating to watch. They don't really feel like ads. They feel like very, like almost like YouTube shorts. They're sort of small talking head videos they're almost like everyday objects rather than everyday carry. It's things that you would find around your office or your apartment or your kitchen or whatever it may be. And then they're sort of taking existing objects and just sort of refining them with this different approach to their design and their sort of philosophy. And I'd encourage you to check out some of their videos because they are really thoughtful in the way that they think about products. And the ones that I picked up were the wine key. And I've had many different wine keys over the years. Each of them sort of do one job, relatively well, but nothing where they do all of the jobs really well. And they are kind of all use the same sort of mechanical design where, you screw in the corkscrew and then you sort of lever it off the lip and then you sort of jump up to the next level and then you finally pull the cork out. But the way that they had approached this wine key was sort of changing where that pivot point was. And so they moved, instead of sort of the moving the teeth that grab onto the lip of the wine bottle, and you sort of jump it up from, one level to the other on the wine key itself, they moved sort of the articulating point up to the hinge. And so now you have this kind of levering mechanical action where, the teeth stay the same point in the bottle, and then the whole actual levering action moves up on a crank arm further up. So it's taking, a very simple problem and sort of refining it and making it a more elegant solution. Yeah. And it's just like kind of a pleasure to use. It just makes the whole process of opening a bottle of wine just really that much more enjoyable.
Sure.
So yeah, I thought that was a cool pickup. So I bought a couple items actually when I put this order through for Craig Hill. The other thing I picked up was their split ring sort of keychain. And again, their video on this is hilarious because it talks about sort of, busting your fingernails, trying to get these split rings open to get the keys on. And it's never really been, an intuitive way to sort of use these things is kind of once you put your keys on, you never want to take them off because it's
Right.
such a pain to do so. But they made a very small adjustment to the split ring design, and they've made this new sort of D-shaped split ring that makes it easy to get keys on and off, but with the same sort of mechanical security. And it's just a really elegant solution to a very simple problem, I guess. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. I have to admit, I kind of forgot that Craig Hill exists. I've owned a couple of Craig Hill products in the past, including an earlier version of their keyring, which I no longer have. But I'm on their website right now, and I'm gonna buy like a new one like today. I think they make like everything I've ever seen from them like is like very high quality and like very, you know, it's that like experience of like thinking like I spent a certain amount of money on this and I got what I like paid for, you know. That's sort of my experience with Craig Hill's stuff. And yeah, they have like all these like I love like a little like desk accessory, like they have these little like puzzles and things, you know, that you can just like they're little like, you know, like adult fidget spinners kind of that are just kind of like sit on your desk and something to like, you know, fidget with while you're in those endless meetings or whatever to like, you know, hold your concentration. But yeah, that's cool. I'm looking at the at the wine key now, and that does look like a you're just like a slightly kind of like elevated design for something.
Yeah. And it kind of has that same sort of look and feel that sort of knives do nowadays with like the G10 scales that they have. It kind of fits. If you were to line up it next to a knife from a current maker, I think it would kind of fit in the lineup quite well in terms of its look and feel.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, as opposed to being, I don't know, either boring or just sort of more, I don't know, elegant looking. I feel like this has a more utilitarian design to it, which I really like.
Yeah. And just if you go through, if you just look at like all their products together, like there is kind of like a coherence in design. Like
there
it
is.
Kind of, it all just sort of like makes sense. Garrett, is this a brand? I'm sure you're familiar with them. Or is this a brand that you've like, you know, kind of come across, you know, at times in your like EDC world?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of, they pop up here and there. They're very kind of design, form over function kind of, or sorry, function over, well, I guess they're a good blend of form and function, really, at the end of the day. Some of their material choices kind of put them at a level that I don't want to pick up. They're kind of, some of their steel choices on their knives is a bit questionable to me, but obviously they're targeting a consumer base that's very different than the one that I'm typically looking at. And for those people that want, you know, a knife that doesn't look tactical and, you know, doesn't seem scary at all, they kind of design products that are in those office friendly looking categories. So they have their place. It's not one that I typically associate with, but I see what they're doing, and they do it pretty well.
Yeah, this is definitely, I mean, I think sometimes when we think of EDC, we think of like, you know, sort of like aggressive, intimidating knives and like, you know, being like out in the woods and like slaughtering your own, you know, I don't know, meat or whatever. It's just like, it's all just very, I don't know, like kind of like hyper masculine sometimes. And like, it's, you know, it can be like an aggressive seeming world. And this is just a different sort of like interpretation. This is like, you know, more kind of like white collar office sort of.
Yeah, it's safe for work as opposed to not safe for work.
Well, I guess it depends on where you work. You know, I think that, you know, in the Worn and Wound office, sometimes it's all safe when it comes to the, you know.
Yeah. I feel like this brand actually very closely aligns with the Worn and Wound aesthetic. I think it has, they share a lot of commonality.
Yeah, it's just, it's like I think that Garrett, you were kind of like pointing out, it's like, it's very design oriented. It's more of like a modern sort of spin on some of these.
Yeah. I kind of put them in the same category that I'd put like a James brand.
Yep.
Like, you know, it's very refined and it comes off that way. Price tags associated with it, I would say, because of the time they're putting into the design and development. And obviously, you know, there's a consumer base for that because both of those brands are doing quite well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll buy something from this Craig Hill website before the day is out.
Yeah.
I'm sure. It'll be,
I guess,
the cultural recommendation in the next pod.
Just before we move off, I guess, Craig Hill, the other thing that I picked up was a pair of scissors from them as well.
Yeah.
Because I've been on the hunt for a good pair of scissors because I hate when things just, when scissors just don't cut right. It's just one of the most frustrating experiences. And every pair of scissors that I have are not serviceable. You can't sharpen them again. So I bought these ones because I feel like they kind of that next step up in buying a good pair of scissors. So check those out too.
I'm embarrassed to say, but I have a feeling many people will have a similar experience. I use my kitchen shears for like everything. Like I don't have like a pair of, I use like the cheap kitchen shears that came with like the cutlery set I bought like, a decade ago. It's just like when I need scissors, that's what I use. So yeah, that's my secret shame, I suppose. But I know I'm not alone. I know that there are others out there who do exactly the same thing. But yeah, no, a good pair of scissors is a good thing to have. I mean, I reach for those kitchen shears all the time, because like it's something you need, from time to time. So, yeah, Garrett, let's talk a little bit about like, over the course of this year in EDC, what do you see as like some of the things that are trending? Like in watches, it's really easy for me to identify like little, both like, small and major trends. Like we just talked about the, Japanese Calatrava style watches. Like that's a little trend that's emerged over the last like, year, 2 years or so. What's going on in the EDC world? Like if people were to jump in now, what would they be like bombarded with?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's kind of really kicked up, I mean, it's been a long running trend, but it's just collaborations are, kind of nonstop. We see this across a number of industries right now because it's such a good way to just combine audiences. If you have two that are very similar, take a product, whether it's entirely new or it's a, custom finish or whatever you're doing on it, it's just an easy way to really hit and expand your kind of market segment. And kind of one of those, like, just right off the top was a Big Idea Designs and Notorious EDC. They did a pin from Big Eye with an actual bottle opener put into it, which is kind of, gimmicky in a fun way. But they had a lot of fun with it. And both of those crews are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
But the big thing is just, kind of doing these collaborative additions, whether it's limited finish, new materials, entirely new designs, whatever it is. It's just finding new ways to connect and work together. And that's kind of been the biggest trend for probably 2-ish years now. And it's still going strong. And I don't think it'll die off anytime soon.
Are you seeing those collaborations between brands that like work in different segments of EDC? So like a knife brand and like a carry brand or a pen brand and like you see like in watches all the time, like, obviously like a media company like ours, working with a watch brand or a watch brand working with an apparel brand or something, like that. Or are you seeing collaborations more kind of like within a certain silo?
It's a bit all over. Kind of one of the emerging trend that I've seen has been what most people would classify as like an influencer that are partnering with smaller manufacturers to actually create their own designs. Captain Ricky and Auxiliary Manufacturing have done a couple different knife designs now where, Ricky's kind of taking the framework that Michael has and he adds his own finish, his own styling, makes it into a special run. A number of other people that were kind of, still an influencer figure, but were bigger and really kind of like industry names are now partnering with OEM companies to come out with their own designs. But you also there's a number of people that are just business to business that are realizing that like, this company has a different finishing technique. Let's do something with them. And there's not as common. It's kind of more, I guess, influencer to maker is really what I've seen. But it's just all over the place. People are doing cool things and trying to figure out what works and having fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's something obviously that we've seen in the watch world for several years. I mean, I think I kind of pinpoint like the pandemic as the period of time where like we really started to see those collaborations take off, and we're, like 5-6 years almost past that. And I think, some people have like collaboration fatigue, but it's like it's still happening a lot, and like the good ones still get attention. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of, how that plays out in the EDC world. If people kind of like are like, okay, like enough's enough with the collabs, or if it continues to be, fruitful for brands, because obviously if it works, they'll keep doing it. I think that's something that, we all, a principle that we all understand. Liam, what about on your side? What have you noticed kind of like trending in like the EDC kind of like areas that you're interested in and looking at?
Yeah, I guess I've seen the biggest shift in EDC that things have become more curated rather than collected. I find, people are moving away from carrying the most things to carrying the right things.
Mm-hmm.
And, pieces that sort of reflect their lifestyle. I think there's a lot more variety in that space now. So people are finding more curated things that reflect their personality rather than just buying the thing that does the task.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's less about sort of tactical maximalism, even though there's still a place for that, and more about thoughtful sort of minimalism, I think. Compact multi-tools, slimmer flashlights, smaller knives made from sort of ultra premium materials, like Magna Carta or titanium. It's kind of like, the EDC world growing up with now with so many other people sort of joining it through social media and sort of other avenues as well. So it's still super nerdy, but it's more about utility with an eye for design, I guess.
Yeah. Do you agree with that kind of summation, Garrett? Is that something you've picked up on as well?
Yeah, I think it really hits the nail on the head. They're, pocket trash, so to call it, or pocket art, depending on which camp you're in, really kind of had its heyday with these little, collectible trinkets. And I think that market will still kind of hang on for a while. There'll always be brand loyalists, but for a lot of people, it's about carrying exactly what does the job and kind of eliminating the bulk, so to speak, and really just, rather than buying one $500 knife, or sorry, rather than buying multiple $500 knives, they'd rather buy a single $500 knife that's going to last and do more than, kind of an entire collection would be. Because at the end of the day, not everybody has the ability or wants to carry 3 pocket knives and 5 flashlights and 4 pens.
Yeah. So I do at this point want to ask Garrett about your own EDC habits, because I think it's like, it's perhaps instructive. So in terms of like, I have a lot of watches. Like I have more watches than I should have. I can't wear them all. I've got like, it's ridiculous. Like I should call the herd. And I think a lot of watch collectors kind of like can understand that. I know you're a knife collector. You have a lot of knives. Like, what's the psychology, of this? Because like we were talking before we hit record. I have like a couple of cheap sort of like Swiss Army knives, and I used to open boxes, and that's all I need. When you're buying knives, are you buying knives for like the function of like individual knives, or are you buying them like I'm buying watches as like part of a collection? Like you just want to possess like these cool things that you love, or is it somewhere like in between?
I think it's a good mix of both. So I mean, like, kind of the way I approach it is there's pieces in my collection that I have because they do something cool, or they have a unique material, or it was a special run, and like, it was a limited production. It's something that I couldn't go get again. And that's not necessarily something I'm going to carry a ton of, unless it's something kind of special. And, I just really want to have it with me. But then I also have the quote unquote workhorses of the collection that are, I can beat up and bang up. And if I drop it or it slides across the concrete, I'm not going to break down in tears. So for me, I like both sides of the fence. I like to have my pieces that are what I would call collectors. I would not consider them investment at all, because realistically you aren't going to make money. There's a few things you might make money on, but odds are I know when I buy a knife, I'm probably not going to get what I paid for it if I sell it. So it's really just kind of limiting those like big ticket unique purchases, and rather shifting towards stuff that I know I could, carry with me on the daily and use, that'll get a task done that I won't have to worry about.
Yeah. There's something comforting about knowing that there are people in other hobbies who have the same like dysfunction that, that I and many other watch collectors, have. It's, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. It's the same with watches. There are things that like you pick up because of opportunity, because you might not ever have a chance to do it again, and you don't expect to like get your money back. You never expect it to be an investment or anything like that, but you kind of, because you love these objects, you want to have them in your collection. And it might not be something that you like bring out of the watch box every single day, or even all that often at all, but there's a certain like pleasure in knowing that it's there, and that you have it.
I mean, I've got a number of friends that are kind of experimenting with different materials that are creating new designs, and like I know that they're kind of playing around and figuring it out. And so it's another one of those opportunities that like they may quit making slip joints, which I'm not a fan of, but I want to support them in their journey. And I know that if I buy it, it'll have a good home and I'll appreciate it for the time and effort they spend into it.
Yep.
And I'll carry it occasionally. And, really it's kind of just supporting the people that I know and like and respect.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's an idea that's like I think a lot of watch people will like identify with very strongly because, anyone who's come to a wind-up event knows that like there's a certain meaning in like buying a watch from somebody that that you've met and has like walked you through their product. And that's a powerful thing, once you have that. I mean, you feel like you're really like supporting them and supporting the industry more broadly too.
Mm. Yeah, I think this is a human
like a human desire to kind of like, sustain
it's like
something.
Exactly. It's sort of what people were doing in antiquity and through the Renaissance period where people would pay patronage to an artist because they know that in order for them to keep creating and keep creating beautiful things, they need some way to sustain that. And so by either buying things from them or donating money is a way to allow that to continue happening. And so I think this is just the modern form of that in a way. When you're buying stuff purely because you just love their process or their approach to something, or if there's a philosophical side to something, still I think the common denominator is that sort of patronage.
Yeah, that's really well put. And that's something that I think about a lot. We'll link in the show notes to an article that that our contributor Griffin Barch wrote actually a couple of years ago now on a collector who kind of like articulated that very well in the way he collected independent watches, especially from like the very high end indies mostly. And that's important. It's important for people to like fill that role at all levels, from the high end to the more kind of like consumer level. And it's one of the reasons I'll just say that like the conversation around like pricing just kind of bothers me. Like, some things might be too expensive to you because you don't love it, but if you love something, you should be happy to pay what the maker is asking for if you really value it. So, and I think that's something that like cuts across, multiple industries. And as you point out, Liam, has for hundreds of years, as long as people have been creating things, that's, something that's played out. All right, let's shift gears a little bit to the seasonality of EDC. We're recording on November 10th. I woke up this morning. It was in the high 30s, I think, here in Concord, New Hampshire, which is actually like not as cold as it's been, over the last week. We've had a bit of a cold snap, but we're heading into those winter months. Pretty soon there will be dusting of snow on the ground. There will be frost on my car in the morning when I go out. Not that I ever leave, really. I try not to this time of year. But, Garrett, you wrote a piece earlier in the year on sort of like summer friendly knives, a piece that was very popular on the website. How does EDC in the winter compare to your summer approach? And the summer was all about like kind of like lightweight, easy to carry. What's the winter strategy?
Yeah, I mean, so winter's kind of, I guess for lack of better words, a wonderful time to play around because really over the summer, a lot of people are wearing shorts, whether it's, golf shorts or basketball shorts. You're typically pretty lightweight. You're probably not wearing a belt. And so you want to keep your carry light enough that you have it, but not heavy enough to pull your pants down. Whereas kind of in the winter months, you're wearing pants, unless you're just one of those guys that wears shorts year round. And I respect it if you are.
That's a New England thing. I'll see that all winter here in Concord, New Hampshire. Mark my words. People will be in a blizzard with they'll be wearing shorts and sneakers going to
there was a point in time where I could do it, but not anymore. I've switched the shorts out already. I'm back into full pants mode, which is great because with a lot of my pants I throw a belt on whether I need it or not. That gives me the luxury to carry.
People aren't wearing belts anymore?
What? Yeah, well, some people.
Wear a belt, folks. Gotta
please do.
Come on.
But no, I mean, it kind of gives you an opportunity to carry bigger or heavier EDC gear if it's something that you want to do. I personally love through fall and really into winter, I love carrying fixed plates. I don't do it as much up here in the city. I think they have still have a wonderful use case. They're not as carry friendly, especially through the subway. So, really what I try to do is I try to keep pocket-friendly knives, and then I go to stuff that's more easier to operate with gloves on, because I know that, that's a possibility. Not quite right now, but within the next month or so, probably we'll have gloves on coming to and from work. So rather switch away from like liner locks or liner locks. I'm blanking on the other type of frame locks. That's what I was trying to think of.
Okay.
Really, and go to a crossbar, like a Benchmade Axis style lock or a push button, just because I can operate those with a gloved hand with no issues. And really, the other thing is, because it's getting colder, the days are shorter, and so I constantly have a flashlight on me. I don't always reach for it, but this is really the time of the year where a late night in the office, a delayed train, whatever it may be, puts you getting off, walking home at 6:30, 7, 8 o'clock, and it's pitch black outside. And New York is pretty good about streetlights, but occasionally there's a dark street that, not so much for safety, but just, hey, I don't want to step in this big pothole, and like, let me just make sure that, I'm stepping in a safe area.
Yeah, you don't want to slip on black ice. There's a lot of
exactly
opportunity. There's a lot. Having a flashlight is like a very handy thing. I've found, and I'm not like, obviously I'm not like a hardcore like EDC guy, but like it does feel, there's a sense of comfort when you have a flashlight on you, and especially in the winter. To your point, when you're more likely to kind of like get caught in the dark sometimes.
Or even if you just drop your AirPod and it goes into the couch, having a little flashlight, put it down on the ground, you can very clearly see it. It makes it a lot easier to find it.
Yep, for sure. Liam, how about on your side? What does winter EDC mean to you? Maybe like on the bag front, like does your kind of like carry strategy change from the summer to the colder months?
Honestly, no. No, I was just sort of thinking about that as Garrett was talking. I tried to do the carry a lot of different things to solve lots of different problems kind of approach to EDC, just because I thought that's sort of what it meant to really sort of embrace that kind of philosophy and that style of thinking. But I very quickly realized that it's just not enjoyable for me. I don't like carrying lots of different things and possibly using them, possibly not. So my everyday carry is very pared back, very function focused. It's always just a knife, AirPods, and like Garrett said, a torch. But even then, I'm not really reaching for that very often. And that's kind of it. Like, I tried sort of some pocket fidget things, and I got sick of carrying it around, honestly. So yeah, year round, it's just the same sort of two things. For bags, my bags kind of do it all, other than just adding a pair of gloves and a scarf to my bag. My bag kind of always stays the same loadout, same everything, other than, I don't know, maybe some hand cream, but that's probably it.
Yeah.
So yeah, boring answer, but yeah, not much.
No, I mean, I think it's instructive. How about you, Garrett, on the bag front? I know you, in addition to being a knife collector, you have a lot of bags, as well. And I know that you think very carefully, about like the right bag for the right situation. And does that extend like to the seasons changing as well? Is that something you think about?
Yeah, a good bit. I've kind of really throughout the summer and into fall, I've kind of shifted from traditional backpacks, especially lately, and going to more of like a sling style bag. So I'm running a 13-liter McKinnon camera sling from Nomadic, which is perfect for just my camera, my DJI Osmo, a few other little odds and ends. But it's really nice if I'm going into an event in the city before or after work and carry exactly what I need. It's not big and bulky. It's easy to carry in the subway. Going into winter, I kind of flip back to a traditional backpack because I know I'm not so much right now, but definitely into December, January, I'll have a coat of some degree, and I'm a very warm guy. So as soon as I get on the subway, whether it's like on the platform or even on the train, I at least want to shed an outer layer, if not, an outer layer and a sweatshirt. So having somewhere that I can just stuff that into makes it so much easier for me to travel throughout the city. So I always try to like oversize my bags just a touch, kind of in that 25 to 30 liter range. It's overkill. I know it. People have heard me say that I love big bags before, and I've carried them throughout the summer. It's just so much easier to use a sling during the summer. Yeah. And I'm recognizing that now. I guess I'm maturing, as some people might say.
Right before our eyes. Yeah.
Eyes. In the fall and winter, it's back to backpacks and somewhere to shove layers.
Yeah.
Garrett, do you have any Have you had any problems with wearing slings in terms of fatigue? I ask because I do, so I'm curious what your experience with that is.
When I first started wearing slings, I tried to like keep the same mentality that I did with a regular backpack, which is like carry everything I might need and then a little bit more. And yeah, it would kill my shoulders. I have, a couple of messenger style bags that I really love. They don't have padding on the strap. And so those still will come out when I know I'm carrying light. But by and large, by reducing what I'm carrying and, less metal, less bulky tools that I don't need, and really just kind of streamlining that side of the daily carry, I can go back to slings, something just to hold a camera, a notebook, a pen, and I really don't have an issue with it, but I keep them pretty lightweight. The nomadic sling that I'm running now, it does get a bit heavy when it's got, a camera and my computer, and, I can fit my Sony 100 to 400 in there. So it definitely can get quite heavy, but it's got a good pad that sits on top of the shoulder, and so it doesn't bother me. And if it starts to, I just switch shoulders, and then I'm good for the next couple hours, and I switch back and forth as needed.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
So
I guess one further question on that again. This is for both of you. I'm curious because I'm very guilty of this, and this happens almost every single time. And for me, it's with bags. It's like if I've got the space, I always end up filling it. And I don't know why I have this kind of deep-seated desire to, if I've got the space, I'm going to fill it kind of mentality. But I wonder if that affects you guys as well.
I'll take this first. I try not to fill everything. I try to leave a little. I try to leave a little room, because if I'm taking a bag to go out somewhere, if I'm traveling, I expect I might need to put something that I acquire when I'm out in the bag. And so I don't like to leave, my home with like a bag that's full. And I'm even I'm heading into the city next week, and I'm already thinking about like what I need to pack. There's always watches I need to take, and like those take up space in a watch roll or in a, like a hard case or whatever. And I expect there might be watches I take back with me, perhaps. And there might be other things I take back, with me, because I'm, in the city. I'll get a little like Statue of Liberty figurine, at a gift shop. That's a joke. I already have several of those. But I like to I like to have options. It stresses me out to have like a packed to the brim suitcase or backpack as I'm setting out for a trip. And it's something I think about for every Watches and Wonders, every trade show, every going to wind up, like anything where I'm like out of town for like more than a weekend, I'd like to make sure I leave some room just because of those incidental things you pick up. What about you, Garrett? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same train you're on here. My big, and I'll, not really a secret, but I'll pull the curtain back, is I switched to using a lot more pouches rather than in-bag organization. And it lets me carry the same things across multiple different bags. But I've also just been outrageously hard on myself about culling things that I'm not using. When I wind up is kind of a bad example, because I know I'll find really weird situations where I need my Leatherman and I need a full set of bits, and I might be loaning gear out to other people, so I want to have an extra knife with me. But I know, like on the daily here in and out of the office, I kind of like, because there is a lot of stuff that I'll use throughout the week at the office only. And so I've even started, like, I'll bring a bigger backpack in on a Monday with a sling inside, leave the big backpack with kind of my kit here, and then just travel back and forth to the essentials. But really, I mean, cutting as much as possible, leave myself room to carry anything that I might have picked up along the way. It's been a big shift, but it's changed a lot of things for me.
Yeah, bag within a bag is like a cheat code.
It really is.
For sure.
I do that too.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone on trips where I've put like a very lightweight, there's like a term for it, Gary, you can probably help me here, like a very lightweight, like packable backpack, like in my, like in my suitcase, just because like a day bag, I guess, is like,
right. It's not too structured. You can kind of roll it, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I love using tote bags for that.
Yeah,
the nomadic packable tote. I know it's a lot of nomadics. I apologize, not sponsored. They just make really good stuff that now that I've in their ecosystem, they've got me. But like their packable tote folds down to, a 4 by 6 by an inch square. and I can throw it in anything, and it's just there when I need it, folds away when it doesn't.
Yep.
Super easy to use, and add another, I don't know, 20 liters of carrying capacity with you.
Yeah, definitely a tote in a bag or a suitcase kind of guy.
Yep.
This is a good segue to talk about sort of travel strategies in general, which is something I always love talking about with anyone. I find it fascinating the way people sort of prepare for a trip. And whether that's a work trip or a personal trip, I think it's you can really tell a lot about a person by how they think about packing. So Gary, you've talked about this on the podcast before, but just kind of summarize your overall strategy for packing. Are you a never a check bag guy when possible, or is that just a fantasy for you? I know, because I know you have
look, we could do a whole hour on packing for travel easily. I think kind of the two schools of thought I break it into are personal travel and work travel. If it's personal travel, I want to be in one backpack, maybe a backpack and a tote or a sling, and that's it. I don't want to check anything. I want to hit the ground running and just go. And so for those, it's really packing as absolutely light as possible. I picked up a Ricoh camera for traveling rather than traveling with my Sony kit. Because anytime I'm traveling, if I'm shooting anything, it's for myself, it's for socials. I love my Sony kit. It's phenomenal, but it's big and heavy. I just don't always need that. So personal travels, backpack, something in the 25, 30 liter range, maybe 35, sling, tote bag, nail it there. Work travel is a whole different beast because I'm traveling with full kit, so to speak. That's usually a backpack with tech, a hard case with camera equipment, and then a checked bag. First couple of windups we did, I tried so hard not to check a bag just because I want to hit the ground. I didn't want to have to wait around for checked bags and luggage and haunting yards. And I kind of just realized that as much as I liked it, and while it was possible, it destroyed my back going into the weekend and more so on the way home. So it's worth the extra money for me to check a bag, wait, the extra hour or so at the airport on the front and back end. And it just makes it so much easier. And when I have the checked bag, I can bring my knives and gear. So it makes it even better. It's sort of about deciding what sort of pain you want to be in when you're traveling, because it's going to suck either way. And Liam, I want you to respond to this, but before you do, I'll just say I have kind of given up on the idea of one bag travel or never checking a bag. I'm at a point where I just don't care. I'll check a bag because for me, it's less stress knowing that I don't have to cram everything into one carry-on and risk. There's risks inherent with with that too. You're not packing the right thing, or you end up on the way back not having room in your bag or whatever. And I just I've decided I don't mind waiting for my checked bag. It's just something that I factor into the experience of travel at this point. Obviously, if it's a shorter trip or a weekend trip or whatever, and I don't need to, then I don't. But it doesn't stress me out to have to check a bag. And I know that some people are religious. It is their religion. They will never check a bag if they don't have to. Liam, where do you land on this? What's your?
I guess before I answer, I want to ask you about checking and not checking. How are your feelings on potentially having your bag not arrive the same time as you?
Yeah, of course, that's always the concern, and I try to mitigate that by making sure in whatever I'm taking on the plane on a carry-on that I have basically an extra set of clothes. So I'm not I'm not just completely out to sea if I if my checked bag, which has it's going to have mostly clothes in it.
Has that happened to you at all?
Not in a very long time, and never, knock on wood, in a professional capacity. I've never had I know now I'm conjuring it into existence, and the next time I travel, this is going to happen. But I've never had a lost piece of luggage for trade show or wind up or anything like that. Even at times when my colleagues have, I can remember Watches and Wonders, not this year, but I think the year before, everyone but me had a lost bag, on the team. So I've escaped that mostly, but of course it's happened, and other vacations and things. And I live in I live in New Hampshire, so I'm flying out of either like Manchester or Boston, and both of those airports, I'm going to have to connect somewhere a lot of times, particularly out of, if I'm flying out of Manchester somewhere. So, I've kind of accepted that, like, maybe I'll lose a bag, knock on wood. It hasn't happened that much for me personally, but I try to mitigate that with, packing an extra set of clothes, making sure I have some redundancies there, because sometimes you do have those tight connections, and it gets challenging. I also I'm pretty good about scheduling flights so that I have a longer connection to, again, like, mitigate the risk of that. And that's another way that I try to reduce my own stress is, I don't want to like be rushing or feel like I'm rushing, from one flight to another for a variety of reasons. One of them being the likelihood of, a bag not getting on the plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that possibility goes up exponentially. The tighter that, time between flights decreases. So I'm with you on that 100%.
Yeah. What about your own personal kind of like strategy? Are you, or have you ever been sort of like a one bag person when you're traveling?
Whenever possible, I will, but I'm usually pretty honest with myself I'm pretty realistic when it is feasible and when it's not. And a lot of times that I'm traveling now is usually with my wife and son. So there's always extra bags anyway.
Sure.
So even if I wanted to just carry one bag, I'd still be waiting anyway. So
yeah,
for me, I'm happy to wait, just like you are on the other end. I'm less about sort of cutting down the time between stuff. If it's just me traveling somewhere by myself, that's a different story, but that rarely happens. So, my work trips, like, have taught me to sort of separate pocket carry and sort of mission carry. And like you said, I sort of build in levels of redundancy as well, just because, things go sideways all the time. And, I'd rather mitigate that if it means just packing a second set of something or whatever it may be. But, my pocket gear stays TSA friendly, pen, flashlight, notebook, while the mission gear sort of lives in a tech pouch or a camera bag, tools, cables, adapters, power bank, all that kind of stuff. I guess the core philosophy of my travel is modularity and redundancy, so that it can scale up or scale down depending on what I'm doing. Usually I have a pouch that's just around data, so storage, data cables, adapters for different kinds of things. I've got a pouch that is just power, so it's power banks, it's adapters, it's things that provide power. One that's just camera. Like, when I'm packing, I can see at a very high level, like, here's what's in my bag at the moment. So I guess it's compartmentalization, literally.
Yeah.
Which is good. I think it makes packing a little less stressful when you sort of know what lives in each pouch or each cube or whatever it may be, and then you can quite easily scale that depending on the nature of the trip.
Yeah, for sure. I have to say, like, I'm jealous at times of people who like have the patience and the ability to like really do the one bag travel thing. And they talk about just like walking off the plane and, like ordering their Uber, like in the terminal, and just like being, that like completely smooth like experience. And I've come to terms with the idea that like, that's just not me.
Yeah. When I can make it happen, it's so nice.
Yeah.
But it's so rare that I'm not traveling either for work or I'm not traveling with any kind of kit. And like, I've done the whole, camera backpack, everything on your back, and I can make it work. But at the end of the day, like, I'd rather just pack it in my Pelican. I know that it's not going to get, hopefully not going to get damaged, and just everything's there. And plus then wherever I'm going, I have a case that I can just set down and open up. There's my workstation. There's my kit. And, it just makes it simpler.
Yeah. Yep. Guys, this has been a really fun conversation. We've learned a lot about each other, particularly in these last like 10 minutes or so as we've talked about travel. Like I said, it's always very revealing. Let's move on to cultural recommendations. This is I always love hearing what you guys are going to recommend, either a piece of gear or a piece of content, or who knows, what it could be, a philosophy, even just like a thought
total
experiment.
wild card every episode. You just never know what you're going to get.
You never know. Garrett, why don't you kick us off? What have you got for cultural recs?
Yeah. So like Zach mentioned, we are in the midst of November, going into winter, which means that we're right about 6-7 months out from June, which is Blade Show Atlanta. It is by far the largest knife show that I'm aware of. If you're any gear adjacent, curious enthusiast, collector, whatever you want to title yourself, if you can make it down to Atlanta for that weekend, it's 110% worth going to. You'll meet a ton of other people, very similar mindsets. You get to meet makers and manufacturers. It's just one of those things that if it's in your wheelhouse, it is one of the events to go to throughout the year.
Good recommendation, very appropriate, of course, for this episode in particular, since we spent so much time chatting about knives. You went to Blade Show Atlanta. Was it this year you went and made that?
I think I'm on a 3-year streak now. I think it did 23, 24, 25. I know there's a report from 24 and 25 on our site.
We'll put links in the show notes to those. Some really great photos. I remember one in particular. There's a photo of a small child, a little girl, looking at a knife of some kind with this like terrified look in her eyes. It was just like, it's very funny. Really captured a moment. Yeah, it was looks like a lot of fun. And lots of cool stuff at those shows for sure. Liam, how about you? What have you got?
Twofold. So one is sort of around design object culture, and that is a TV series on Netflix called Abstract: The Art of Design.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Particularly the episodes on industrial design and product design. I think that the way that they discuss materials, usability, and tactility sort of overlap with a lot of things that happen in the EDC world. And then I think this one is a little more philosophical and craftsmanship, but Jiro Dreams of Sushi is a masterclass in obsessive refinement.
Yeah.
I think, it's perfectly good shorthand for one good object perfected philosophy that's at the core of everyday carry, at least for me anyway.
Yeah. Jiro Dreams of Sushi is a fantastic documentary. It's about way more than just sushi. It's really about
it's philosophy.
It really is. Yeah. It's about one man's sort of like approach to his job. Really, really fantastic film. Highly recommend that. My cultural recommendation this week is a television show that premiered on Apple TV Plus over the weekend called Pluribus, which is the new show from Vince Gilligan, who made Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and also wrote a bunch of great X-Files episodes back in the day. TV veteran, just really, prolific writer. But Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are really what he's like most famous for. And this is his big follow-up. And I don't want to say too much about like what the show is about, because part of like the real pleasure of the show is discovering what it's about on your own. They did the Apple TV Plus folks and everyone involved in the like sort of like launch of this show did a fantastic job of keeping that a secret and only just hinting at it. And I think it's important that you not know. But the first 2 episodes are on Apple TV Plus right now. They're both great. It's funny and also like pretty audacious, and at times actually like kind of like surprisingly moving in a way. And it just has this like really interesting concept. I'd say if you like high concept science fiction, this is a show that you will want to watch. And please DM me when you've seen it, because I'm like desperate to talk to people about it, because it's the kind of thing where you watch and you will like want to discuss it with people. So only 2 episodes in, maybe it'll, who knows what happens, but it's very, very promising. I'm excited about it.
Could you give us, I guess, maybe 1 or 2 sort of, if you're a fan of this show, you might like this, that aren't by Vince Gilligan?
So, yeah, I will. So it's nothing like it, but I had a similar emotional response to this show as I did when I saw this special on Hulu a couple of years ago called In and of Itself. I don't know if either of you guys are familiar about that. It's basically like the guy's like essentially like a magician who like has this sort of like stage show that is like extremely surprising and has I don't want to say too much about that either, because it also like has all these surprises. It's if you like things, if you like to be surprised, if you like to be sort of like, sort of like jarred by something in like a good way that like really makes you think, if that's the sort of like TV or movie or type of content that you like, I think that you will respond to Pluribus. The other thing that it makes me think of a lot, I'll name 2 things that are kind of like related. The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Amazing film.
It made me think of that in some ways. And
so good.
Related, every Invasion of the Body Snatchers story, which The Thing is an Invasion of the Body Snatchers story. So there are corollaries there for sure.
Hell yeah.
But I really wouldn't want to say more.
Now I got to watch it. I mean, you sold me.
It's great. Like I said, if you've seen it and you had a thought on it, get in my DMs. I'd love to talk to almost anyone about
Slide into Zach's DM.
Yeah, they're open. It's a really fantastic show. I'll leave a link to In and of Itself also in the show notes, because that's came out during the pandemic and was sort of forgotten about, but like really fantastic thing. It's a bonus cultural rec there. Watch that.
Yeah, I think you've got me sold on this. I might have to resubscribe to Apple TV to watch this.
I think it's it's worth it. I think it's very solid. Garrett, Liam, thank you so much for coming on the pod, talking about EDC. This was a really good episode, and thank you to everyone who tuned in and listens every week. We really do appreciate it. We will be back next week with another all new episode of the Warner Wow podcast. Until then, take care.